Hello and welcome to Level Up and Friends, the podcast where those of us from the video game and comic book store, Level Up Entertainment, get together with some friends and talk about subjects we're interested in. I'm your host, Scott, and joining me, I've got Kit.
Hi, my name is Kit. You might know me as the artist behind Sticks and Spells. You could find me on Etsy, Instagram, everything behind that handle. It's really good to be a part of this podcast today.
And joining us for the first time, I've got Asho.
Hi, my name's Asho Buckingham. I run Curated by Asho. I'm on Etsy and Instagram, and I make weird art every day.
All right. So, what the kind of stuff we normally talk about on this podcast is usually like kind of pop culture stuff. Like the last two episodes we did were on the Super Mario Brothers movie and like Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And then occasionally we talk about like some serious topics. Like I have a whole series called Q and Gay, where we get into various like queer discussions or like black issues and back issues, where we talk about like the black experience with artists and writers. Um, this is probably the most different one we've done because we're talking about cryptids, which kind of is not super serious. So it doesn't fit into that, and like has a mild connection to pop culture and things, but it's something I've always been very passionate about. And you both happen to do cryptid stuff with your various art, so I thought this would be a fun discussion to have. Um, but just so people know what we're talking about, cryptozoology is the study of animals that may or may not exist and don't necessarily have to be supernatural. And cryptids are just what people refer to as a general thing for like those creatures. So like your Bigfoots, your Loch Ness monsters, those kinds of things are cryptids, and cryptozoology is the study of those. So I just want to ask you guys, why do you find cryptids interesting?
I have really enjoyed the concept of cryptids since I was a kid. I wasn't a big reader back then, but like the type of books that I was glued to were like urban legends, cryptids, stories like that. I guess I've kind of always been keen towards like not horror per se, but the uncanny, the unnerving. And I feel like cryptids really sum that up because it's the unknown, but the folklore behind it is really enticing, and the different takes on it by different cultures and different people. It's just kind of like an intoxicating rabbit hole that it's hard to pull yourself out of.
I definitely agree with that. I feel like rabbit hole is a great way to put it. Once you start learning about cryptid stuff, it never ends. The lore just goes deeper and deeper. I definitely have a passion for like fake nature documentaries specifically when they talk about cryptids as if we have scientific data surrounding them, and just the camp that it entails is so good. It's just a nice little human scary ghost story, but on YouTube this time.
I would say we probably shouldn't call it a rabbit hole. We should call it a jackalope hole.
Yes.
Uh, but no, I agree. And like my interest in cryptids and the supernatural goes very, very early. I don't know which came first, my discovery of like a lot of local legends or Ghostbusters, but they kind of go hand in hand with my original, like some of my early interests. And like we'll get into this towards the end of the podcast, but like I've had some experience with supernatural and cryptid stuff, but I remember very early like discovering like, oh, there's a monster that lives in the like area where I live called the Jersey Devil, and it's like scared me but like fascinated me. Like I would read all the books and stuff about it, but like I was so scared of the idea of that. But I would watch a lot of see, I was the opposite. I was a very, very avid reader as a kid. My mother was a librarian, so I kind of grew up in the library during the summers when, so that way they didn't have to do babysitting, but like they would have VHS tapes of unsolved mysteries, and I'd watch them over and over again, like the old one, like the old school ones, because I think that they've done a couple of like reboots of that, and then things like Ancient Aliens and stuff are spiritual successors, but that's a different conversation. I don't like Ancient Aliens, but yeah. So it's just something I've always been extremely interested in, and like you're saying, like the folklore behind a lot of these things too is just as fascinating. Like whether or not you believe these things exist, they're still really interesting to learn about.
Yeah, my parents definitely instilled the fear and the interest when I was younger, because having grown up in Central Jersey, we're right on the cusp of the Pine Barrens, which is
Yeah.
the Jersey Devil and a pivotal point when it comes to Jersey cryptozoology. and we used to go into the woods often, like four-wheeling.
Oh
And
yeah.
my father really enjoyed creeping us out as much as possible with all like the stories and the legends when we're in the woods. So uh a lot of that is to blame on them for my interest because it's
Mhm.
kind of like scarred into my DNA at this point.
So you don't even have to go that deep in the Pine Barrens. It like you look at it and it's really scary. Like I don't have to go far, like the woods next to my neighborhood, like because they get all trees get all like gnarly and like gross, and there's like no undergrowth at all. And like at night, you can definitely be like, oh, this is terrifying. But like I was a Boy Scout, so we'd go camping all the time, and then everyone tells stories and stuff. And like I live in South Jersey, and I grew up in South Jersey, which is where the Pine Barrens are. So like, yeah, when that was just a thing we'd always talk about, and ooh, yeah. But like it's like one of those things. Like I'm scared, but like I can't like look away.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like it really plays off like the cryptids really play off like the idea of the human psyche and how we create these monsters. And the more we think about them, it kind of brings them into existence.
Yeah. Do you have any local cryptids, Asho?
So, no, I grew up in Memphis. There's nothing scary there but cops.
Oh,
Um,
oh,
but
they're universal monsters. So
honestly, yeah.
yeah,
The school I went to was on the woods though, and we had a little made up like tiny cryptid. It was this really, really small, like alternative school. And there was a fox that lived in our woods that we were convinced was some sort of hybrid, and we named him the scariest name of all, Peter.
yeah.
Um, and we would catch glimpses of him during recess and whatnot. And I was just enthralled with the idea of like going somewhere that wasn't a city and seeing something that's scary and undiscovered. But I didn't get to grow up with any good cryptid really examples and fell into it when I got older.
Hmm.
Especially moving to the deeper, deeper south, there was just way more spooky stuff when you moved to rural Alabama.
Yeah. Well, there's speaking of someone whose family goes deep in South Carolina. When you're down there, there's not much else to do but tell stories, drink
Oh
beer, and
yeah.
shoot guns at things. So
And what better to do that than aliens and swamp
yeah,
beasts?
yeah. And but like you know, mentioned like talking about like because some theories are certain cryptids, like almost every culture has some sort of wild man.
Hairy
Whether
man.
yeah, whether it's like Sasquatch or Orang Pendek or the Yeti or something. So I wonder if there is like sometimes there's people just in the cryptozoology circles talk about like maybe some of these things were inspired by something real at one point, but so far in like our past and it's just been stories brought down culturally and like has changed. Like one of the ideas, because also everything has like a dragon.
I
So
was
Mhm.
people
just about to say that.
yeah, so one of
Yeah.
the things is like maybe like dinosaur skeletons before we knew what they were. Like you'd find like a bunch of like giant teeth, you know, from like a Tyrannosaurus Rex that like 9 inches long. Like, oh, that's from like a dragon monster. Or like the Cyclops, people found like elephant skulls because where the trunk is just a giant hole in the middle, so it kind of looks like one eye socket. Just stuff like that. And I find even thinking about things that way really interesting. But I also like to think about things the way I was like, well, if this is a real thing, how does it work?
One of my favorite things, I do a lot of like side study on medieval bestiaries. I love
Oh,
the
they're
art.
awesome.
But the way that they got designed is that they had people whose like whole jobs were to illustrate, right? And the
Mhm.
explorers were this other party. They would write letters and just describe something just verbally in a very, very short like terms of phrase. And then they would try and draw it and replicate based on this very, very brief thing. So they invented these outrageous creatures and got them so, so far off. Like they tried to describe cats at one point. It was hilarious.
Oh yeah, and what's funny
And then
is
we get these
yeah.
transmogrified versions of what is really a natural creature, just misplaced.
Yeah, it's really funny, especially when you know it's a real animal that they're trying to do. It's like this insane game of telephone. Like like a lion like makes no sense when you look at them, but like we know what they are like super well now. But even things like gorillas used to be like a thing that we didn't like wasn't known to Western science and then was discovered. And it's they kind of have like a basic description that you could fit like a Sasquatch into, where it's like a hairy half man, half like monster thing that lives in the woods, you know, and is like scary and powerful.
Yeah, there's so many scary things out there. Like, think about just the sounds that they make. Like, have you ever heard a fox fight? Terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, have you?
Terrifying. It sounds like a person. Like, no wonder they were creating
Yeah.
these concepts and visuals to go with these things that they hear at night.
Yeah. I mean, you ever hear like a rabbit die?
It's wild.
It's one of the worst things you can hear.
Oh, that sounds awful.
Yeah, they like scream like people. It's awful.
Oh
It's
God.
it's that it's the humanness sound to it
Yeah.
that really freaks you out.
Yeah. Um, so now that we've kind of established a little bit of what cryptids are and like why we're into them, do you guys have any particular favorites for whatever reason?
Mothman.
Yeah.
Mothman,
Say,
like,
I know you both do Mothman stuff, so
and honestly, close second place is the Fresno Nightcrawlers. They're just so funny and funky looking. I've tried drawing them a million times, but they always end up looking like teeth, and I end up scrapping it.
And I feel like Mothman, my favorite one to draw and make art of is the Kelly Hopkinsville alien.
yeah.
Because he's got little suction cup feet and these big, huge, wide set eyes, and he just looks like Dobby the house elf a little bit, but cute in a way. He was kind of
Yeah.
adorable.
Yeah, is they're only like what, 2 feet tall?
He's a tiny little guy. He's got big
Yeah.
ears and suction cup feet.
Yeah, if
Just love him.
people don't know the Kelly Hopkins story, it is weird. I mean, most of these stories are pretty weird, but like I think it only really has the one like family
It's
that they terrorized,
the
right?
one family, there were like 10 or 12 people in the house over the course of
Mhm.
the night. They shot it with bullets and they were like, we hit it. It ricocheted off. It's bulletproof.
Yeah, like they
And
would
they would
hit
like,
it, they would hear the ricochet and they'd like roll back and then they'd kind of like start floating back
jump
towards
back
them.
up.
But they seemed to really just be like wanting to check them out. They weren't really attacking them.
Just
Um,
scampering around on the roof.
yeah, it's bizarre. But you guys both mentioned Mothman. Mothman, obviously, a lot of people have seen that. Like Point Pleasant was kind of terrorized by that for a little while.
And I'm finding that there is a massive resurgence in popularity of cryptids, especially Mothman, because
Yeah.
I've had some of my like cryptid designs for a while. And in the beginning they were like okay, but now everyone is like, "Oh my God, Mothman, Mothman, Mothman." Like, I'm not sure what it is with this current younger generation, like but they're crazy for cryptids again. And I think it's awesome because it's keeping the stories alive and giving us more content, but I'm just not quite sure where it came from.
I mean, maybe it's a weird. All right, I'm going to sound so old saying this, but maybe it's like a weird disconnect that like our interconnected technology world has, where like maybe there's some mystery left in the world people are looking for, and these kind of like are a cultural artifact. I mean, I also really want to go to all of the museums and like I love the camp element of it as well. But like I think maybe it's like a connection to like our past. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe they just think your drawings of him are very cute.
No, no, I think that's a valid point
Yeah.
because
I,
everything is known. There's so much science today. So having that little bit of mystery, it's thrilling.
as
Yeah.
a young folk, I would definitely say there's some like nihilistic absurdism amongst the young kids too, where everything is so silly in the real world and like it's just ridiculous and going to heck in a handbasket.
Mhm.
So like believing in the cryptids and having some like little joy to be found in it is so fun and silly in camp and like it's all wild anyways. Why not believe in Mothman?
I mean, I guess there's probably an element of counterculture in like taking these monsters, like kind of how like they made the Babadook like a gay icon. Do
They're
you know
doing
what
the
I mean?
same thing with Mothman.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I think there might be an element
Yeah.
of that, which again, it's showing my age. I just don't get it, but like more power to you. I don't care. Like whatever makes it fun. Um, and like yeah, so all right, so all right, you guys both like Mothman. You like the Kelly Hopkinsville monsters. What were the ones you draw that look like teeth? They're like those two walking leg things, right?
Yeah, the Fresno Nightcrawlers.
Yeah, I don't like that. If that was a real thing, I don't want to see it.
Oh no, I would be terrified. Like
Yeah.
at like terrified seeing it in real life, but
Mhm.
they're silly little guys doing silly things and they're cute.
Yeah.
But don't do it near me. I don't want to see it in person.
Say any other ones you guys are find notable?
Always loved the Chupacabra. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember watching a really, really scary YouTube video about the chupacabra as a child, and then immediately going on vacation to Puerto Rico like 2 weeks later
Oh
and
no.
being just mortified as a little kid. I was like, oh, this is staying in the nicest hotel. I had no reason to be afraid of anything. But I was like, oh God, I'm here with it now. The chupacabra is gonna eat all my goats. This
And
You
for
know,
some
this is
reason,
it.
that's like one of the scarier ones. I don't know what it is about it,
you
but
know
it
what
just
it,
feels the most feral.
you know what it
Feral's
is?
a good
Yeah.
word.
Yeah.
So that's actually a relatively new thing. I think it only dates back to like the 1990s. Something like
Really?
that, maybe the 80s at the earliest, but I think I remember first hearing about it in the 90s and then like looking it up. So so the chupacabra has a bunch of different descriptions. Which kind of one do you guys like subscribe to, where it's more like dog like, or like where it's this weird little alien thing?
I kind of in between.
Right.
Like I definitely imagine like just skin is what I think of, like just like skin on bones and scrawny and scraggly.
The worst hairless cat. The
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, how do you tell between a good hairless cat and a bad hairless cat? I'm not making a joke. I know it sounded like one, but I was like, hairless cats are kind of weird looking. Um, yeah, I don't know. I like the more like monstery one because I'm sure it was really just dogs with mange.
No
But
doubt.
oh
and
yeah.
like, so I don't know. I was also thinking about this. I'm kind of going back to a little bit because this is going to kind of go into my next comment. Like, so I've kind of always been obsessed with monsters. I think that's from being a big dinosaur nerd as a kid and as an adult. We're like, oh, these were monsters that were real. Um, so because of that, like stuff like Michaelia Membe and like the Loch Ness monster and stuff, I don't personally put a lot of stock in because they're very outdated depictions of what like the animal they claim to be as, which we now know like the roping like doesn't work the way that an actual pterodactyl does. Um, Now I'm not going to say like I believe in all of these things and I don't believe in all of them, but like I definitely know for a fact some of them are real because I've had experiences. I don't know if you guys have had any kind of cryptid or supernatural experiences. I've also had multiple ghost things between my brother and I.
Oh, same. My fiance and I really love camping out in the Pine Barrens, like Brendan T. Byrne area.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this one cabin that we stay at routinely. That's like a tradition at this point. And we were staying up late. It was like 2 or 3 o'clock, which makes it even creepier. And this is like cabin in the middle of the woods. Like there's
Yeah.
no one around. And at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, we hear a clear knock, knock, knock on the door. And it was by far one of the scariest things.
What did you
Uh,
do? Just cower in
uh,
bed?
well, we clearly had lights on and we
Yeah.
very quickly turned them off. And then we're like, if someone's out there, they know we're in here. Like, don't kid yourself. So I grab the machete that I had and I run outside and I yell into the void. And I'm like, I have a weapon. I will
Mhm.
defend this place. Show yourself. And I like circled the perimeter. And then we ended up uh taping garbage bags over the windows so they couldn't see in and trying to go to sleep. It was so bad. We were pathetic.
I would definitely not be able to go to sleep.
No. I haven't had any cryptid experiences. I did grow up in a haunted house
Mhm.
that absolutely has ghosts. It is the scariest place. Every person I've ever brought back to my mom's house has had a panic attack. It is just an unholy ground. So I definitely believe that there are things around and about doing whatever it is they do.
So, all right. So we've had a couple of ghost things in my house growing up. So my brother and I both had experiences, and we never talked about them until we were adults. But we used to sound there was a man in the hallway, and occasionally we'd see him like peer around the corner, and like he kind of reminded me of like a Freddy Krueger kind of thing. But I would always like sleep with my door closed, and then, like occasionally we'd see like someone looking in from the outside. So I was always really terrified of windows at night. Another thing, like my family has a cabin in the Adirondacks, and my grandfather at the time was just my grandfather, but my grandmother is also her ashes are spread right on the property. And I remember I was at the car once. You have to walk, you have to do like a short hike to get from the car to the cabin. And there was a black bear in the area that like was known about, just like be aware. And I swear that I saw it. And I got really scared and like hid in the car and I was there for a while. And then I eventually heard my grandfather's voice like no bear, no bear. And then I was like, okay. And I felt comforted and I went and like kind of ran back to the cabin. So I do believe in like ghosts, but I've had two experiences with the Jersey Devil.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll explain those now. So the first one was like late spring because it was the end of the school year. Like there was only like a week or two left in the year 2000. So oh my god, 23 years ago. So it was one of those nights where like you're kind of up, you're kind of down, like you're not really sleeping through the night. So like I don't even know what time it was, but it was like late at night, early in the morning, something like that. So I'm just laying in bed, not able to go to sleep and just like feeling like crap. And then I hear like some scratching going like around my bedroom's like on the corner of the house. And I started hearing some scratching going like around the vinyl siding. I'm like, that's weird, but I've got like bushes and stuff there. Maybe there's a weird breeze. I'm trying to like play it off. And then there was like a pile of wood by the curb, like to be thrown out. And I kind of heard something jumping around on it. I was like, oh my God, what is that? It's of course it's pitch black out, so I can't see it. And this is before like cell phones and stuff. I mean, they existed, but like I was 15, I did not have one. And if I did, it was like a Nokia like brick. Um, and then I started hearing the beating of wings and like the most god awful like scream you've ever heard. Like I can only describe it as like a long female moan with like a whistle underneath. But it was terrifying. And
That
then
description is
yeah,
haunting.
it's awful. And then like way down the block after that flew away, I heard like hoof clopping on the pit on the asphalt. And then let's see, so I was 15 then. So 2 years later, I think it was during the summer, because it was at the end of my Boy Scout careers, because I was one of the oldest. So I wasn't 18 yet, I was 17. Because I hadn't graduated from Boy Scouts yet, but I was one of the oldest, so I was kind of responsible. We're at like a campground. It's like buildings and stuff. We're not intense. Um, but you know, it's night. Everyone's a teenager. And I don't know if you remember what it's like being a teenager. We have so much energy. So all of the young guys want to like explore the trails and crap and just, you know, it's dark, but it's not like too dark. It's like 9 at night, 10 at night, something like that. But then, you know, we're just like in the woods and then the trail, I see like a shadow run across like way in the distance. And then of course everyone's all excited and wants to check it out. I'm like, well, that's clearly like some sort of weird animal, but like it went really fast. But I was like, well, that's not a deer or, you know, something. So anyway, I eventually tried steering everyone back, and you just feel you're being watched.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like your prey instincts kick in. I'm like, all right, I got to get everyone back. I was like, in the back of my head, I was like, I can't be, but I was like, I can't take that risk. So eventually I got them all back. But like later in that night, we're playing a board game or something. I'm just like laying on the couch because like my nerves are all shot. Because I didn't want them to know, like, I was like, oh, I think it's the Jersey Devil. Like, let's get the fuck in. Um, so anyway, yeah, they were like, oh, it looked like you've seen a ghost. I was just like, I'm tired. And I didn't go to sleep until after everyone was asleep because I was kind of expecting it to like come around the cabin again, like it was at my house. Anyway, the next morning, it's like the crack of dawn. I got to go to the bathroom. So to go to like the bathroom's in a separate building, so I have to go to that. And then way in the distance, I hear that same scream that I heard at my house. It's like, oh yeah, I was right. But it was like very far away. So I was like, I don't think it's in immediate danger. But I was like, yep, that was a thing. So I do believe in the Jersey Devil because I have firsthand experience, but I don't believe in like the Loch Ness monster because plesiosaurs don't actually like live like that, and there'd be no way to get like enough of a food source of breeding population in one lake. But that's a
So I
different
have a question
conversation.
for you.
Yeah,
Do you believe that there is a single Jersey Devil, or do you think it's a species?
my guess is probably more of like an unknown, undiscovered animal.
Okay.
I don't think it's actually like a demon that was born to a woman. I mean, it's a good story.
I do love the Leeds family myth. It goes back to that like cryptids reflect something in human like fear and nature. If we're talking about like hairy man myths or whatever, that like birthing a demon as your 13th child in a puritanical family is very like big scary human thing.
Well, this also goes back to like Revolutionary War times because some of the stories are like, oh, she his father was like a Prussian soldier. So it's like old school like anti-war racism or war racism like propaganda. I'm like, that's kind of funny. But yeah, I think that it's got to be something like I said, I don't. I mean, maybe it is a demon. I can't say that it does. They don't exist because I do think there is like a spirit world, but who knows what happens. But my guess is probably most of these are more unknown animals or maybe some misidentified thing that's just like kind of like a game of telephone through generations as like warped and changed.
Probably one of my favorite backgrounds for a cryptid that I've heard. Absurd. Don't get me wrong, this is absurd, but it's like the most indulgent is that for the Loch Ness monster, where it's seen, there's a high ratio or of like amethyst sediment, like crystals, that there's so much that the energy within the crystals create a time warp that allow uh from the past, at the prehistoric past, that it's actually an old dinosaur that it flitters into our current time period because of the high energy of crystals within the bedrock of the lake. One of my favorites.
That's a pretty good one. I'm gonna steal that and use it in
I
a comic
love
book.
that.
Yeah,
Loch Ness
It's
Monster, the
so
crystal
good.
bitch, is a
yeah,
great take.
yeah.
Love it.
She's girl bossing. We love it.
So yeah, even though, like I said, I don't believe in the Loch Ness monster, I did have a friend who went to Scotland, and I was like, "Are you going to Loch Ness?" And they're like, "Yeah, probably. I'll go there for one day." I was like, "Hey, can you buy me some kitschy like Nessie stuff?" Like again, because I love the roadside attraction element to a lot of these as well. Um, and I don't know, I find it all very fascinating. Like I really want to go to Point Pleasant because they've got the Mothman Museum right there, and then they got a Flatwoods Monster one in the same town.
Yes,
Which like
that one's terrifying.
really, I definitely don't think the Flatwoods Monster's a thing. I think those kids were primed to see some sort of space alien, and then I think in the dark they were like misidentified something.
Dude, the Flatwoods falls apart when they all interviewed them separate too. There
Yeah.
are like 8 different Flatwoods monster versions. That's a loose one. It's a great little story though, very
Oh
spacey.
yeah, I appreciate the story of it, but like I don't think it's a thing that like you need to be there and be afraid of.
The imagery is eerie to me.
Yeah. Well, when you see it on like way Monster Quest would present it, it's like, oh God, how are we still alive? But
Well,
yeah.
is it Monster Quest that also has the lizard version of Flatwoods
Yeah,
Monster?
that one has the lizard one.
I
The
hate
lizard one stinks. I love the one that you did with the Kelly Hopkins
my
piece that you did.
star-crossed lovers. They're coming through space and time to find love.
So I want to talk to you guys about cryptids in your art real quick, and I think that's a good segue for you, Asho, because like I originally just got your Mothman one, and then this year you had those ones. You had a Bigfoot looking for big love. So it seems to be like a romance theme with your cryptid art.
It is. So, backstory is last summer, I work at a summer camp and I got very sick from some of my kids, and I spiked the first high fever I've had in my adulthood. And in a fever dream, I saw Craigslist misconnections posts from Mothman looking for love in Point Pleasant. And he
Mhm.
was appearing to all those people because he just wanted a friend. And from there, this fever dream spiraled out of control. This has become a huge part of the art I make and sell. We've done dozens and dozens of these lino cut prints of different cryptids that, instead of being scary monsters or like reflections of space age propaganda, are really just looking for love and connection and just making kitschy little characters out of them. I think it really calls to the roadside attractionness of it and
Mhm.
less of like spooky ghost story. But also I just love the idea of taking the existing source material and making something camp out of it.
Yeah, I need to eventually get the whole collection and like do something with them together on my wall. Because right now I just have the Mothman one. I'm gonna eventually pick up the other two.
I
That
just
I'll,
printed
sounds
some
so
Bigfoot big
cool.
loves.
yeah, the Bigfoot one's pretty great.
I'm prepping for Pride. I have a whole bunch. I've got one framed in the hallway right over here too. It's actually on repurposed Atlas maps, so I could do a
That's
Bigfoot for
cool.
wherever you're from.
Yeah,
That's so clever.
I should point out, like, yeah, a lot of your art like involves a lot of recovered material, which I think adds an element to some of it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I work on entirely recycled and found and thrifted materials, specifically because printmaking, like relief printmaking, can be so wasteful and so
Hmm.
consumptive. And as much as I love the art form, it just pains me if I have to make 10 finished versions of something, I need to print closer to 15 for all my mess ups. So using secondhand materials can A, make each piece one of one and truly unique, but B, I'm not bringing anything new into the world that didn't already exist.
It's like protect the planet that houses the cryptids. Like be environmentally friendly so that they can live in a clean nature setting.
It's their planet too.
It's their planet too.
Yeah, that's not something that's talked about enough when we talk about climate change. It's like, hey, we need to save the Bigfoots if they may or may not have exist. You know, we're deforesting their planet.
You can prevent wildfires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and since we're talking about how they inspire our Kit, I know you've done a couple of things with cryptids. I know specifically Mothman and Bigfoot I've seen. Will you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about what you've done with those?
So I was really intrigued with making this concept of a cryptid club with that anyone, it's more of like a philosophy. So I do these designs with patches or like an official cryptid club member design because anyone can like throw it on and go and do their own investigation and like you're part of this just wide web of people that all have that same thought process and it's just really fun to play on that. I've had a lot of people ask me if it's a real club and I was like, no, but like it's in your heart. That's what matters. So, and my goal is just to make it cute and palatable. Like my moth, like one of my Mothman stickers is like a baby Mothman.
Yeah,
So my
say
goal is just to make it as like cute and palatable and like something that isn't normally child friendly, make it very childlike. I think it's a fun mix of settings.
say I know your other Mothman sticker you've done like as a from Point Pleasant, not PA. Oh my God, Point Pleasant, Virginia, West Virginia, and it's like kind of like a badge, but it's like a sticker. I would show you, but it's on the back of the laptop that I'm using to record this.
I
Um,
love like classic camp badge
yeah,
designs.
I think I've told you is like
They're so fun.
I think I told you like I want a whole series of Cryptid Club ones of like all of them because
I
I've showed
want
you
to
some of
so
the
badly.
patches I've had. Where they're like, yeah, I've got like a Bigfoot one, I've got a Loch Ness monster one. I think I have just a general aliens one, where they kind of all are like the same style. Like you can tell they belong to a part of the set, and I love them because I need to collect things. Like if there's one style of thing, I have to have all of it, which is why I'm not allowed to buy pops. Um, but I would love to get more of those from you. And
Yeah.
I love my Cryptid Club T-shirt. I'm not wearing it. I'm wearing a different Sticks and Spell shirt, one that's more accurate to how I feel right now, where it says dead inside on the front and on the back, everything hurts and I'm dying. Because my body's old and falling apart. And I did a punk rock flea market at it this weekend, and I left my house at 5:30 in the morning. I got home at midnight, so I'm very tired still. But that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, I love seeing your guys work. So have you guys read any like comics or played any games or watched any like cryptid related movies you'd recommend? Because I have a couple. I can get us started. There's a comic book called Perhapanauts I really like, which is kind of like a secret government team of cryptids that go and deal with cryptid stuff. Like there's a Bigfoot on the team. He's kind of the leader. He got hit with like an intelligence ray because it's sci-fi and stuff. And then they hit a chupacabra with that, but like it doesn't work right for him. So he's kind of like the goofy character on the team. Like Mothman's like a recurring character in it. Where like it's part of like a race that like travels through space and time and like try to like correct the timelines and stuff. That's why he was showing up at like Point Pleasant because like, oh, the bridge is about to collapse. Um, it's fun. It doesn't come out regularly. Another book I need to recommend right now. It's called The House of Lothar. It's by my friend Kaylin Smith, who unfortunately couldn't join us for this podcast due to technical difficulties. I would love to have had her here. But it's about a young woman. I don't know what time period it is, but like I want to say it's Victorian times. But she becomes a janitor at like this old mansion called the House of Lothar, and she realizes it's like eventually finds out that's like supernatural and like the residents are all cryptids and stuff. She just launched the Kickstarter for the print copy of the first volume of it yesterday, and it's already like 300% funded. So I'll put a link for that in the description if anyone wants to check it out and do it. Her art is great. It's described as gritty Disney. So it's got a Disney style, but like it's like rougher in a good way, like not, you know, it's one of those things you once you see her style, you'll know exactly what I mean. But yeah, did you guys have anything you'd want to recommend or
I've got a deep cut.
sure?
Where I went it back to me being a child. I was a big reader. I spent a lot of time in my neighborhood library. It was a block away, and I'd bike there. And I read every Bailey School Kids little baby novel,
Hmm.
which is just as trash series. All the books are like 100 pages long. It's about a school where all the teachers are either they're vampires, they're werewolves, the lunch lady's a monster. There's every book is a new monster. The teacher is something different, and they're cryptids, and there's a Bigfoot. It's just the silliest, campiest, and the kids Scooby Doo style, like run around the school and uncover the secret and defeat the bad guy,
I
all while
mean,
still maintaining school.
that's the Harry Potter books. Why wouldn't that be popular?
Right, right.
Yeah,
But it was concurrent with Harry Potter, so obviously overshadowed.
yeah.
But they had the silliest cover art too. I want to say they were published in the 80s and early 90s, so they were like already a little bit thrifty by the time I was reading them in the 2000s. And they just every week I'd get a new one.
God, that killed me talking about being a kid in the 2000s.
I'm so sorry. Don't ask me what year I was born in.
um, I remember the 80s, so I'll leave it at that. But no, that's cool. I'm glad that like again, this is a cool generational thing everyone can share. But I remember like a lot of TV shows try to capitalize on this stuff. Like I remember watching like Monster Quest. Like that show's kind of bad. And
In the best
it's
way.
very formulaic. But there's a YouTube channel I really like called Small Town Monsters where they do it's more like interviewing people. Like they do go in the woods looking for Bigfoot or whatever, but like whenever they do that stuff, it's more like they show like a lot of beautiful, like it's just like more of like a camping kind of thing. We're like, oh yeah, here's like bear footprints we had. Like here's how you can tell and like how you can cast them and stuff. I don't know. It's really I like it a lot. And then they do like more like refined documentaries where it's like they'll dig into like Mothman, but it's mostly a lot of Bigfoot stuff. If that floats your boat. Actually, you're both
So,
art. Oh, say, oh, sorry. You can go.
no, I was gonna say, I feel like I just asked Courtney if they could think of anything either we've been into that have like the same vibe as like cryptozoology. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of SCPs,
Oh, I
but
love SCPs.
they give off a very similar vibe. And
Yeah.
there's like such a plethora of content that if you ever feel like you like reached your peak of like cryptozoology content, it's a really fun neighbor to like dive into.
You know what's great about the SCP universe is it's all open source, so you can just use it. But like I know
Yeah.
SCP-1000 is Bigfoot. I know there's one that's like the Wendigo. Don't ask me what number it is.
Yeah, but like there's overlap, which is really
Yeah.
cool because it grounds it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the SCP is great. I recommend it all the time. And there's a lot of great YouTubers that do stuff with it. There's been no really good games. Like there's been games, but like they're not great. But like I said, because it's open source, like you can just kind of take stuff from it and just use it in your own things for profit or for fun, whatever you got. But I was gonna say, since you're both like, artists and creative types, if you were to design your own like cryptid or monster, is there any particular like feature you want them to have or like some kind of interesting lore you think you would do?
I'm taking this question very seriously.
As you should.
Oh
This
yeah.
topic demands serious consideration.
This is an SAT question essay.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
I guess maybe the best way to start this is like of your favorite cryptids, what are the elements that like you find most fascinating, either from a lore or like a feature standpoint?
okay.
So go ahead, go.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. I think my favorite little common thread between the cryptids I make art about are their dead empty eyes.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
love the ones with like glowing eyes, no iris, no pupil, or like nothing whatsoever, no readable facial expressions. Something about that is just so haunting and charming to me, and like blank slate.
So you would just have so as for a starting point, we'll work on one together here though. Let's do it that way. So you're in the woods and you just see a dark mass and it just has two like headlights, like round headlights coming at you.
Big old bug eyes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right. So that's where we're gonna start. What about you, Kit? Why don't you add to this?
So I can't believe like the concept of this cryptid didn't come to me earlier when we were talking about my favorites.
Yeah.
Probably because it terrifies me so much, I like block it out until it comes to mind.
Mhm.
Like skinwalkers,
Oh, they're
like
so scary.
I like when we go out in the woods for anything, I just envision them and they chill me to the core. And it's the concept of something that's so human, it's not human. And just the blending in is what freaks me out the most. So, uh, that, and I sometimes I swear the concept of like a shadow person can be a cryptid as well.
Yeah, yeah, they're a thing.
I also like the old-timey fairy description.
Oh,
Like
they're evil.
they're
Yeah.
big spooky. Tinkerbell did wonders for the fairy population.
Yeah, fairy
Um,
circles, I take those serious. I don't step foot in a mushroom circle. I'm not gonna mess around. No way.
Yeah, but we're not in England. Come on. Or or wait, are they from like Ireland?
Ireland, I believe.
Yeah, well
think Ireland because
they're
it's
from
got the
over there.
AE.
Yeah, they're from over there. Who cares? We're American. We step where we want. That's what our whole country's built on, right?
Don't tread on me.
Yeah. God, I can't believe I still see so many of those flags floating around. I was like, we don't live in the South. Um, anyway, that's a different conversation. I'll probably edit that out. But yeah, so like I mean, even then just keeping like its shadowy like thing kind of lurking in the woods with big bug eyes. I mean, that's pretty scary. Like you don't have to
Yeah.
do much. Your imagine it's the Jaws thing. Like sometimes the less you see, this like your imagination fills in the details and like you're gonna come up with the scariest thing possible.
I believe in that wholeheartedly. It's like the whole concept that our minds naturally put together pictures. Like if you look at wood grain, you're going to see faces pop out at you. It's just the way our brains are wired to create images and faces.
Yeah, it's called
So to give us,
pareidolia.
yeah, that. So
Yeah,
like just to give us a blank slate and that we will scare ourselves on our own. We don't need any extra help.
cool. I mean, that's good to know that we're probably never gonna be get rid of that like monkey part of our brains.
Nope.
I mean, I don't know, maybe they'll have some sort of computer implant we can eventually put in there.
But it makes you wonder why we have that part of our brain. Like, was there a reason that we needed to have that pattern recognition back in the day to like avoid being hunted by these things?
I
Like
mean,
everything comes from somewhere.
that's why fear of the dark is such a prolific thing. Because like, oh, that's when predators would kill you. You know, that's why
Yeah,
like full moons are really scary because it's really like it's light out, so things are more active because they can see you better. I think that's where like the concept of like a werewolf being attached to that comes from. Excuse me.
And I will say, as far as like brains being wired for pattern recognition, there was a point in our history where you had to know all the foods that were safe to eat because we weren't going to, the store to do the thing. And like you have to know all the faces that everyone makes to know if they're a friend or a foe. But we're so far removed from like, foraging that now we have this weird skill that's hardwired in and we got nothing to do with it but scare ourselves in the dark.
I mean,
yeah, good
the,
use for it.
the reason we even have color vision is primates needed to know when food was ripe or fruit was ripe. So they developed color vision so they can detect like, like, oh, this apple is red now. I can eat it. Stuff like that. And it's weird. You think like, yeah, like just biology and like how it plays such small parts in like how we interact with the world. Like it's the reason we're bipedal and like use tools and stuff. It was just like ancient survival techniques and just happened to be mutations that like our ancestors kind of like passed down. And then these stories are probably, like I said, are probably a big part of that. When like a lion takes someone in the middle of the night and you don't know why, like, oh, you see these big scary like claw marks in the ground. Like, what made those? And like, again, you feel in like, what's the worst thing it could be?
Yeah, the fill in the blank.
Yeah,
Scary Mad Libs.
exactly. I was trying to think if there's like terror libs or like a good one. There's not. Oh well. But yeah, is there anything else you guys wanted to discuss cryptid style before we call it quits tonight?
I've been trying to remember the name of his YouTube channel, and I, for the life of me, can't find it. But they do almost exclusively indigenous Canadian folklore and
Is
myths.
is it Harrison Peters?
I don't think
All
so.
right, because that's one of the ones I watched too, where he's very Canadian. You hear it in his accent. But, like, he talks about like, yeah, Canadian myths and like legends and stuff. And he's a good person to fall asleep to. He's got one of those kinds of voices
Yeah.
where, but so that's another recommendation. But if you happen to find the channel you're talking about between now and I think next Friday, this is going to go up. Just drop it me an email and I'll link it.
Absolutely. But I really do feel like there's something special about like indigenous American folklore and myths and cryptids that's different from like, I don't want to say like contemporary, but for lack of a better word, the non-indigenous ones. I think there's something so sacred and special and neat about learning about them, and they have the same fear factor and sort of basis, but just a different reverence about it. Like I love Ogopogo. He's just so nice.
Yeah, I was about to say maybe it's because we live in North America, but like things like the Wendigo and Skinwalkers, it's like, I don't want that to be real. I don't want that around me. But like it is funny, like when Europeans came over, like we brought like fairies and leprechauns and stuff with them. Like, did you ever read American Gods?
I
They
was
talk,
the thing when we were
yeah,
talking about fairies and coming over,
yeah,
I was gonna bring that up.
yeah. Like that's kind of an interesting way. Like, granted, that one's probably more of like exploring the stuff as like a cultural aspect rather than like, oh, we brought actual monsters over. But that also deals with more like worship and like other aspects of things. Is like one of the main characters is Odin. Um,
But it's more so like the belief that the human belief in something collectively is strong enough to bring it into existence.
yeah, I find that fascinating. And also Neil Gaiman's one of my favorite writers, so like it was an early thing I discovered from him. And then yeah, that's a great book. I don't really like the show, which I think got canceled. I don't think it ever finished.
No, it got canceled.
Yeah, I didn't think it was very good. I felt it was all style over substance, whereas like I loved the book. But yeah, I don't know. It's fascinating, and we could probably go on like some crazy deep dives on some really obscure things, and maybe we'll do a part two sometime because I'd love to bring Kaylin Smith and to discuss this. Um, maybe after maybe when volume two comes out, we can do that. But yeah, like I said, it's always been a thing I've been fascinated by, like even before having personal experiences with it. Because I remember when I originally told my friends about like when the Jersey Devil stuff happened to me, they're like, "Oh, it's because you believe in all that crap. Like you just think it happened." I'm like, I disagree wholeheartedly because that was one of the scariest, especially the first time. Weirdly, the second time I wasn't nearly as scared. I guess probably because I was like with people, even though I was outside. But yeah, I don't know.
For a lot of people, seeing is believing, and
Yeah,
until they experience it themselves, they just can't they can't bring themselves to believe in it, which is fair, but I believe.
yeah. Or I want to believe. No, I definitely do.
I want to believe, yeah.
Yeah. I definitely do believe. And like even the stuff that I find more far-fetched, like to be plausibly exist, the story of it is still fascinating. And I kind of love all of them. Like, it's like real life Pokemon.
Yeah,
Gotta learn about them all.
and the fact that in the year 2023, scientists are still discovering fully unknown species of creatures.
Yeah.
The fact that it's happening means it's going to continue to happen. So all of this, there's a small plausible reality to it, which is really fun.
Definitely enough hope to hold on to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It gives you something to hold on to.
Yeah. And I like the idea that there is some mystery and wonder still left in the world to discover. There's still blank edges of the map, you know?
Absolutely.
There's still places where they would write here there be dragons. And maybe we'll find an actual dragon. I don't know. That would be cool.
Every culture has them. They
Yeah.
gotta be from somewhere.
Like I said, I subscribe to the theory of dinosaur bones and
Oh
doing
yeah.
inspiring dragons. That makes a lot of sense, but like, they're fun, like in general. But like, I think that's why like they're so they're fun to study just because they're so different from culture to culture. And like not
Yeah.
only like in description, but like what they represent. Because like in Chinese mythology, they're usually pretty like they're good versus like European where like they are like monsters to overcome.
They're fire and destruction, period.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I
don't know.
definitely think they're fun to make art about too, because it's not something you see every day. So for like a lot of history, people have been just captivated by like you get to make something that you don't see every day
Yeah.
versus drawing that same apple over and over again.
Yeah. And like I assume as artists, they're probably fun to like play around with because there's like you can't say you're doing them wrong.
Exactly. Everything is up to interpretation.
Ooh.
But when you draw one, people know what it is, which is really, really fascinating. That something that can vary 100% can be identified.
We'll say how does the people recognizing your Mothman charm right next to your Gengar charm, which did they go for first?
People really go for the Mothman,
All right.
which is
I
good. I hope so.
Yeah. Good. I'm makes me happy.
I say people like my traditional Mothman better than my Mothman in drag, but
They're wrong.
I honestly,
I
she's
haven't seen the
beautiful.
Mothman in drag.
Oh, she's beautiful. She's got on tall boots and a tiny skirt and big glammed up wings. It's
Beautiful.
just silly.
Oh man, that's super exciting. Like I'm excited to get more stuff from you guys. I'm just selfish and want more because I like both of your art, but you know, it's a fascinating topic to discuss. And yeah, we can discuss whether or not things like may or may not exist, and if they do, what are they? But like I said, the folklore to it is a big part of the charm. I just everything about like the roadside nature of everything. Like I don't know, it feels like there's like a shared experience in certain areas where like if I go to Pacific Northwest, like people like have Bigfoot experiences, like and they're all wildly different people. And like I don't know, it's fascinating to hear people's stories, and then you kind of want to piece them together. One of the earliest, I'll just share this one story, and then we'll probably call it quits because it's been about an hour. One of the earliest comics I was trying to make was after my experience with the Jersey Devil is like, then I like read every book like even more. And I was like, what if all of these stories were real? And I tried to make like a timeline and like a story, and like there was multiple demons to deal with it because like that would explain like the different like descriptions. And like I came up with this whole thing where like there's kind of like this misunderstood heroic monster. It was really the firstborn, but it ages really slow. So it was still like a kid when like its 12 siblings were like looked older than it. And like it became a whole thing. I never did anything of it because I was like 15. But now that I'm starting to like make comics with my friend, maybe I'll revisit that idea. That might be fun. But they spark the imagination. Uh, you know, whether you try to like make them like scary or you're trying to do something fun like make a drag queen Mothman. Would that be like a moth woman? I don't know I'm I don't
It's
know how the
touchy.
drag I don't know how the drag queen culture works.
I don't know how drag culture works with cryptids specifically. I
Yeah.
just refer to her as Mothman in drag.
Okay.
And no one's come on to me about it. I guess I could give her a really funny name. That would
That's what I was
be,
trying to think of a name. And that's
yeah.
the only thing I could think of. But I know there's like a lot of like slang in the drag community. I've never watched RuPaul's Drag Race. I'm queer and I'm involved in all that community, but like I've never been to drag shows. Like it's just a thing I've never done. I've never had the opportunity to. Closest thing I had a friend who was a burlesque dancer, and I went to one of her shows once. But like that's a totally different thing. But
I want to draw a I want to give your Mothman drag queen, I want to give her a girlfriend.
I would love that.
what's her
She,
what's her
yes,
girlfriend gonna be?
I don't know. The
just
possibilities are
supportive.
endless. We need to collab on this.
Okay.
Absolutely. I'll carve it and everything. We can print
Yeah,
it. It'll be
let's
great.
do it. Let's do
Yay.
it. She needs a partner in crime.
All right. I'm excited to see what this is going to be. I was gonna say a Bigfoot in heels would be kind of funny because
Oh,
it's got big feet. Do you know what I mean? I
Bigfoot
don't know. That's the only
yeah.
hiking on a
idea I have.
corset.
Yeah.
Yeah, cinch that
I was
waist.
gonna say you could
Snatched.
do some really fun stuff with the hairstyle. Like you do like a big bouffant thing, but like you can spread it throughout the whole
Yeah,
body so they're really
it's
fluffy.
it'll be called Snatch Squatch.
Sasquatch.
Oh, you heard it here, folks. We've got a new monster on the loose, and she is fabulous. But guys, thank you again so much for joining me. I really appreciated talking to y'all, and it's fun just to hang out. I know I usually see everyone in like a more professional setting where like we're vending and working on stuff together or blah blah blah. Like it is fun to just get around and around the digital campfire and talk about things. Especially, hey, we can tell some more like monster stories at some point. I'm sure I mean, if they ever find a Bigfoot, like we'll definitely come back and talk about it. Um, which always makes me laugh about like shows like Finding Bigfoot. Like if they found it, we would have heard about it before the show.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But
Yeah,
I'm okay going along for the ride.
it is
It's the
fun to go
journey,
along for
not
the
the
ride.
destination.
I don't disagree, but let's give everyone like one last chance to find where they can find you. Kit, where are you at?
All right. You can find me mostly on Instagram, Etsy under the handle Sticks and Spells. I've got a lot of shows coming up, ranging from New York City to Virginia. So if you look at my site, you can see all the shows that you could find me at in the next couple months.
And what about you, Asho?
Lovely. So my name is Asho Buckingham. That's my Instagram handle, and my Etsy shop is curated by Asho. I'm gonna be at Philly Punk Rock really soon.
Nice.
And stuff
I'll see
in
you there.
Oh, for real? On the Sunday
Yeah.
Friday.
I don't remember. Oh wait, is that the one outside?
Yeah.
Oh no, I did not do that one. I chickened
JK.
out.
That's
Sorry, sorry.
it.
Well, you
But
both
yeah,
did Free Comic Book Day, which is the most important show you can do of
Free
the
Comic
year.
Book Day is lovely. Anywhere
Yeah.
Scott asked me to be, I'll be there.
Oh,
And
mostly
then
be Free
we're in
Comic Book Day.
Baltimore.
Yeah. So yeah, Baltimore's a little bit of a drive, but like you both, like Kit and her friend Annabelle does like kind of spooky horror stuff. Usually have you guys come out for Halloween Comic Fest because that's
hmm
a little bit more curated and smaller, but like I try to get people that have more of like a monster, like more of a Halloween thing. Kit, since she sticks and spells, she's got like a lot of witch stuff. So again, that works into like the goofy nature of Halloween, where it's not not that your stuff's super scary either, Asho, but sometimes I do have some people that like go for more of that route at that show, but we'll talk about that when it gets a little bit closer to October.
Well, yay. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for
Yeah,
joining
always
me.
a pleasure.
I'll have more excuses to have y'all guys on at some other point. We can talk about that off mic if there's ever anything you either want to promote or like any kind of topic you want to talk about. Let me know.
Yeah.
So again, thanks for both of you for joining me. Thank you for listening at home. I'll have links to everybody's stuff in the description. So until next time, be safe.